Good morning, everybody. Namaste. Salam alaikum. I don't know how to say swadika. It's a very big honor to be here in front of you to start off the second day. And I think it's also quite, it made me nervous to think about how to speak about a topic such as the one that I've been given to people who've worked on that their whole life. So I hope you will bear with me, and I hope that today will be as productive as yesterday was. As you know, all of us have been working on education on different parts of the whole education spectrum for many years. And yesterday, at the end of the day, I was having a discussion with some of my colleagues who are here. And one of the things that we were discussing is how the field has changed in 15 years, or 20 years, or 25 years. The issues that face us today are somewhat different from the issues that we've been dealing with all along. That doesn't mean that some of the old problems have gone away, but it certainly means that there are new things that we need to think about. And what I thought I would do is just leave a few things with you as you go through the day to think about what are the new ways and what are the new challenges that face us. But before moving to the present, I thought I would just do a very quick review of a certain part of things that have been done in India. I'm just looking at the period of about 10 years. As some of you may know, in Pratham, we've been conducting the annual status of education report for 10 years. The acronym is ASAR, which means impact, and it's a very large household survey that is done every year across all rural districts in India to look at whether children are in school and whether they are able to read and do arithmetic. And this 10 years of evidence actually allows us both to look back as well as to look ahead. And I thought I would share a few things with you. A decade is not a very long time in the life of a country. And yet we see that many things can happen in this period of time. If I look at girls who are out of school, not enrolled in school, in the age group 11 to 14, which is a difficult age, and the reason we take 14 is in India we have a compulsory education law which ends at 14. If you look at 2006, these are the states who had more than 10% of these girls not enrolled in school. My own home state is Bihar, which, as many of you know, borders Nepal. And Bihar was one of the states that had, one of the highest proportions of out-of-school children across the country. This was the situation in 2006. And if we look at 2014, the numbers have drastically dropped in many places. So much so that in Bihar, for example, the percentage of out-of-school children 11 to 14 today is lower than the national average. And if you look at the difference between boys and girls, it's practically gone away. So there are things that can happen in a short period of even 10 years that make a very significant change in the nature of what is possible next. I've put this picture here because this is a very well-known example from Bihar of how girls were offered bicycles if they finished 8th grade. And that, if you are traveling in Bihar, you will see this everywhere. At a certain time in the day, the streets are jammed with girls going to school. So both in terms of hard evidence, in terms of experience, in terms of what you can see, things have changed a lot. Just to go through what really made this change happen, and I would say that this is a set of strategies that the government put in place and remained with for a period of 8 to 10 years that made this happen. And I'm using this as an example because I think it's important to see that it's not just one thing, it's a whole host of things coming together that makes big change happen. So going very quickly, they did a number of things. You have to pardon me. If you're on a long flight to come to a conference and you've just learned how to do animation, then I have to show that off on every slide. So this is why. So what they did was they had different strategies for different groups of children, different things that had to be done with them, either in school or out of school. And I think that's what led to this overall change. But apart from what was happening directly with schools and with the education system, the government also put in place a bunch of other schemes, programs, and movements that I think help to create the atmosphere to make the core enrollment activity happen better. And I've just put a few of these. There were a number of other things, particularly with women, that was happening in the state. There was 50% reservation for our panchayat elections. Panchayats are village councils. There was a large-scale adult literacy campaign aimed at women. And then, of course, the famous cycle program that is well known. Women's self-help groups were also given a lot of priority and a lot of focus during this time. And I think all of these things together, both an enabling environment, specific strategies, and partnerships to make this happen, results in the really sharp decline of out-of-school girls in a state that is still quite poor and quite backward. But looking back at what happened during this period, I think there are a number of things, if we had to do it again, or hopefully we don't have to do it again because they're all in school, but things that I think looking back were critically important that more should have been done of. A big thing about getting children into school is that there's a lot of focus on the children and their families. I think we need to focus as much on getting schools ready for the children as much as we do for getting children and families ready for school. And a few quick things in that, I think, and I know you have sessions in this conference which look at the issue of language, especially for the younger ones who are going to come in. And then I think that I'm sure there are many sessions in this conference which are being devoted to how do you accelerate children to catch up? What kinds of support do the children need? What kinds of teachers will we need to make this happen? And not just think about schooling and how important it is to bring them into school, but how do you equip them to really deal with what they need to do when they have to not just go to school, but remain in school. So I think the goal is not just bringing them to school, the goal is to sustain this mainstreaming process over a long period of time so that they can achieve the things that we want every child to achieve. So I want to bring to you just, I see there is no timekeeper, but I'm sure somebody will cut me off if I talk too long. I want to bring 4 things into the discussion for the next 2 days. One of the things, and again we see this from the Indian data quite clearly, enrollment levels are now very high. And I was in a school in a rural area, and I asked children to define for me what the word enrollment means. And one child put up her hand, and she gave me, I think, the perfect definition for enrollment. She said, enrollment means my name has come to school. And I think that's true. In large parts of India, your name is in school every day, but you're in school sometimes. And really what we need to assure is that you and your name and your head and your heart are all in school at the same time, all the time. So we have more than 96% children who are enrolled in school. And this has been the case now for at least 6 or 7 years. But if you visit a government school at any time, you will see very varying patterns across the country. And I know at the back it's difficult to see, but you can see the colors for sure. In large parts of South and West India, enrollment, the name and the child are both in school. And both in school most of the time. So you can use enrollment as a good proxy for the fact that everybody is in school. But then we also have large sections of India where your name is in school every day, but you're in school only half the time. And I think it's important for us to think who is in school, not just enrollment, who is in school when, and how can we increase this engagement and participation in school? Because if the implications of your being enrolled but not being in school are quite high. We have a new government in the capital of India, in Delhi, and they've been looking very hard at their numbers and data from schools. And for the middle school and the high school age group, they've identified some very long-run absentees. They find that about 30 to 35% of children are often gone from school for more than a month at a time. which means that the strategies to teach these children, the strategies to bring these children back, has to be devised so that the opportunities that the children who are attending regularly get are also given to them. So the first point I would say is it's important for us now, when enrollment levels are very high, to look at who is in school, for how long, and how much of the time. The next one, I think, is the focus of much of the discussion in this conference, is really this issue of learning. And again, I want to go back to what our ASER data shows us. For those of you who are not familiar, the simple reading tool is like this, where we ask children ages 5 to 16 to just see at what level they can comfortably read. Letters, simple words, simple short paragraphs, and a short story. And we find, as you can see from the numbers on the other side, that even in grade 5, about half the children are struggling to read the very short, simple story, which is at grade 2 level. If you go up to grade 8, which is the last year of compulsory schooling in India, we still have about 25% who are unable to deal with even simple text like this. The 10 years of ASER data from every district in India, and the sample is very large. It's something like 600,000 to 700,000 children every year. We find that, and it's a representative sample, so it has all children, not just children who are enrolled in government school. We see three things. The first thing, which you can see here, is that the basic learning levels are unsatisfactorily low. But the implications of that low level permeate through the whole system. If you don't learn some basic things early in school years, the chances that you can catch up are very low. So these early years are super important, because that's when really the foundation can be built. And if you plot all the ASER data over time, you can see that the learning trajectories, which should be steep, with value gained every year, are actually quite flat. And a third thing that we've been seeing, and there are many discussions in India around this, and it's not just the ASER data, but data from many other large-scale surveys, is showing a declining performance of cohorts over time. Now, the causes for this, can be a source of a great deal of research, but it's clear that if these basic fundamental building blocks of learning are not put in place at the right time, it almost wipes out all the advantages that we are making with increased enrollment and schooling. So this is the second point that we need to think about, that we need to really think about those who are in school today. If their experience in school, if their learning in school is not strong, these are the ones who we are going to have to deal with tomorrow. The third point I want to make, I want to illustrate with a story. It's a true story. Maybe true stories should be given some other name, because a story makes it sound like you made it up. So this is Hyderabad in a southern state in India. And like many of our cities, Hyderabad too has an old city. And the old city is where, we are all familiar with what old cities mean. It's crowded, it's cramped, it's a hub of commercial activity, and so on. And some of my colleagues and I were trying to figure out how many children in this area, this building is called Char Minar, it has 4 minars, and it's about at least 500 or 600 years old, this building. And so we were trying to figure out how many children work in the main road that leads to Char Minar. So it's a big area, but we were just focusing on one major street. And there are there are proper shops, and then the shops have a little, I don't know what you call it, like a little platform or whatever outside the shop. And then on the other side of the footpath, there are more shops, which are usually of people who are using hand carts. So there are almost 3 layers of work happening even on the same pavement. And so there were 3 of us, and we were walking down the street. We were talking to a lot of people. And after about an hour, a couple of boys came up to us. These were boys who were selling ribbons, safety pins, buttons, that kind of thing. And they came to us. They were shorter than me, I remember, but they were not, they were certainly more than 10 years old. And they said to me, what are you doing? So we said, we are looking to see how many children work. So they said, and then what will you do once you find out? So I said, well, maybe we'll think of sending them to school. So those boys started laughing. They said, why would you do that? So I gave the usual education type answers, and it didn't convince them. So one of the boys asked me, so can you teach? And I said, I'd like to think that I can. So I said, yes, I can teach. He said, say something in English. Let me see if your English is good. So they actually tested us out. And he said, how much money will you charge? Now, these were not questions that were in our mind. So I just made up a number and I said, how about 100 rupees a month? The boys said, you couldn't be very good because a good teacher would charge more than that. But it was a very interesting discussion because it wasn't like I was trying to convince them. They were trying to negotiate with me and figure out what it is that I could give them. And at the end of our discussion, they were convinced that between the three of us, we were okay, and it was worth trying us out. And they said, we are 250 or 300 such boys. Do you want to come and meet all of us? And we can get space for you, and if you're good, we can even pay you. But we have to try you out because we don't know exactly how much you know. Now, this is really, this is an example of thinking about a whole set of things about who to teach and how. Because, we did start working with them, and it was a challenge because it was like you were teaching your mother-in-law how to read, and, she wasn't going to take it lying down. They had views as to what they needed to learn and how that learning should happen and in what form. And clearly the usual standard school stuff was not going to work because they were far ahead of all of that. And then I think that it made us all think about many of these questions that I've put here. It's not about whether I'm in school or not. That's clearly, something that has been thought about. But for kids like this who are very savvy and who really, they are not averse to learning, but the learning has to be of the right kind, the right place, and of the right quality, and according to them, of the right price. Because something that's very cheap is of no use. How do you cope with children like this? And some months later, I had an opportunity to talk to about 50 headmasters and headmistresses of schools in that area. And we were having, as we often do in India, very serious discussion about the right to education. And when it was my turn to speak, I just opened the window, and this is the view you could see. And I said, whose responsibility do you think are those kids out there? And then I told them this story, and then we had to start the whole conversation all over again, because we had been going down the path of kind of the standard path. And this meant that we had to actually leave the meeting, go out on the street, talk to these kids, come back and sit with our hands in our heads to say that we need to start all over again. A fourth point, and I think this is something that everybody will resonate with, at least looking back at the experiences that we as Pratham in India have had over the last 15 or 20 years in working with governments at different levels. From the city government in Bombay, and founder of Pratham, Farida, is here, and she's been a stalwart in building this work. From cities to districts to states, we see some lessons that were important lessons that we shouldn't forget. A couple of simple things like goals that everybody understands, that parents understand, teachers understand, your local shopkeeper understands, are really important, because to get at a big change, you have to have simple goals that everybody understands. A second point that we've seen when we've worked successfully with partners and governments is a broad openness in accepting the problem. We spend a lot of time fighting problems. I think if there is a broad openness in accepting problems, it helps the path go further. All the partnerships that we've seen that have been successful have been very strongly led by the government. So how can you lead and be open and invite people to join you and continue to evolve as the needs of the situation evolve? I think this is a big art. And in fact, I feel that this opportunity to speak to you should have been given to many of the other people who were actually behind these partnerships. Multiple groups working on different parts of the problem but working in sync is also something that I think has really worked. And a longer term, big change doesn't happen overnight. I think the Chief Minister of Bihar once said, development is not an explosion. It all can't happen at one time. It needs some time. It's like yogurt, where you have to put the right, I don't know what the English word is, thing in, and then the yogurt will set. It needs time. It needs some patience. It needs the right temperature. And then I think you can see that things happen. And of course, simultaneous work both inside and outside schools, or across different dimensions of where we are working. And finally, flexible strategies, which you're already focusing on, that are allowed to evolve and germinate over time. I think these are things that we have learned that are very useful lessons as we go into the future. And just to conclude, I wanted to just bring up an experiment that we have just completed in Pratham, completed or started, I'm not really sure. We find that involving people is an exercise that needs to be done repeatedly. Involving in what ways and to do what things and how are things that are different across different contexts. So for 10 years, we've been working on this annual Status of Education report, which is a very tightly executed plan for coming up with the kind of data that we did. But we always felt that really at the core of it, we would like local people to take a look at their own neighborhoods and figure out what it is that their neighborhood needs, and somehow all together we should be able to respond to that. And that includes children who go to school, who don't go to school, who learn, who don't learn, all of these categories together. And so in November and December of last year, we as Pratham, we are quite a large family, we are across many states, and because of different kinds of work that we've done, there are many people who we feel we can lean on and associate. We decided, is it possible to reach 100,000 villages and get local people there to take a look at whether their children are in school and whether they are learning, very basic learning. And if people in such a large scale did it, would this lead to a big change? Would this lead to a change in mindset and a change in participation? I think the first small step in this direction has been taken. Our target was 100,000, but we found that when you actually reach out to people, the number went far larger. And we stopped counting sometime in January, and there were at least 150,000 communities who had taken some kind of a look at the status of schooling and learning in their own communities. And this effort, I think, has given us a lot of new energy. I think hope is always there, but occasionally you need to refuel and re-energize to say what can be done. The energy that has come from all kinds of new people as well. We had tremendous success in high schools and in junior colleges of young people who felt that they have come this far, and they certainly have some time and energy left to give younger children in their own communities to help them cross this schooling and learning divide. So I want to just leave you, and my friend here has helped me he has taught me something this morning about how you embed a video in your presentation. So I want to just leave you with this visual image of what we can all do together.
अगर हमारे गांव में बच्चे नहीं पढ़ सकते तो उनकी मदद करना हमारा फर्ज है। मैं भी लाखों में एक हूँ, लाखों में एक आप भी बनिए। सुन ले मेरी बात जरा और हो जा मेरे संग तू।
The word lakho mein ek literally means 1 in 100,000, but I think you can sort of translate it to mean 1 in a million. So the aim is to say every village, every community is 1 in a million, and every child in that community is 1 in a million. We need to take care of each and every one of us. Thank you.